It's the summer of 1988. Bishopville, South Carolina was a sleepy little town where nothing much happened. That is, until one fateful night in June when poor old Chris Davis was driving down a dark, lonely road near Scape Ore Swamp. It's late. He's tired and driving home from working the night shift at a fast food restaurant. He realizes he has a flat tire, so he pulls over to the side of the road to fix it. It's hot, muggy. It's creepy out here. There was not a soul around, yet Chris could not shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. With nervous glances over his shoulder, he works on the tire. As he's finishing fixing the flat, Chris sees a creature lurking towards him. Chris is shocked and frightened and rushes to get into his car and drive away, but the beast is soon on top of the vehicle. He slams on the brakes, causing the creature to roll off the car, but this gives Chris just enough time to escape. Welcome back to the Southern Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Swift, your trusty guide to all things Southern folklore. Today, we're going to be talking about the lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp, or simply, the lizard man of South Carolina. He's a beast, a legend, a creature that allegedly terrorized the sleepy town of Bishopville, South Carolina back in the summer of 1988. Was there really a lizard man creature? Or maybe it was just a symptom of a small town going stir crazy. One thing's for sure, it makes for a damn good story. So, grab a cold drink and let's dive into the murky waters of this true Southern legend. So, 17-year-old Chris Davis was lucky to escape with his life that June night back in 1988. Chris described his wild attacker as a 7-foot, scaly, red-eyed nightmare of a creature, something straight out of a B-grade horror movie. After escaping, Chris doesn't call the cops. He doesn't rush to the police station. No, he goes straight home and tells his dad, because when a reptilian monster attacks your car, that's family business. That's not cop business. It took hours for his parents to console him. Chris, for fear of being mocked, and I can't say I much blame him, he would not report the incident to the authorities until later, much later. And by then, another family from Lee County had also reported strange marks on their car that looked like a large beast had done it. When Chris finally submitted testimony to the authorities, Chris would also give them a crude and simplistic drawing, and thus, the lizard man legend was born. Once word got out about the green-scaled boogeyman, the sightings exploded. As this lizard man legend took off, locals began coming forward with their own eerie encounters. There was Dixie Rawson. She was one of the first. She woke up one morning to find her car covered in scratches and deep puncture marks that looked like they had been made by enormous claws. She recalled hearing a strange and terrible noise outside the night before, but she had never imagined it would lead to just such damage. Then we have George Plyler, who claimed the creature had been terrorizing his livestock, harassing his hogs and goats, and actually killing several of them. We have Frank Mitchell. He was a local pilot, and he said he had a run-in with the supposed lizard man. He said this was a 9-foot-tall figure with a strange, lumbering gait who strolled across the grassy runway, forcing him to abandon his flight plans. Lizard man, what a jerk. Then we've got Kenneth Orr. Now, Kenneth was an airman stationed at Shaw Air Force Base, and he reported that he actually shot the lizard man, and he brought what he claimed were blood and scales to the sheriff's office. But the scales turned out to be to be from a fish, and Orr found himself facing charges for filing a false report and illegally carrying a gun. Eventually, he confessed and said, I quote, "I made the report just to keep the legend of the lizard man alive." Oh, Kenneth, that's pretty ballsy, going to the police with quote unquote evidence that you've killed the lizard man. But we've touched on this in our last episode with the Witch of Yazoo. You know, what is fact? What is fiction? Are people being honest about these types of sightings and reports? Are they in it just for the attention? Did they really see something that they can't explain? But as we consider all this, and before we dive deeper into this topic, let's have a drink. So as in last episode, we're going to have another pumpkin beer. It is getting towards the end of October, and as I mentioned last episode, I'm about at my wit's end with pumpkin beer. I typically end up having a lot during this season, but today we're gonna go with Sycamore, which is a brewery here in Charlotte, and I'm right outside of Charlotte. We're gonna go with their Pumpkin Latte Blonde. So it's not just a straight up pumpkin beer. It's a blonde ale with coffee and spices. I gotta say, it's pretty tasty. Can I have more than one? Probably not. It's pretty good though. I gotta say, it does have that spice to it. That's nice, and you get that coffee note. So it's, like I said, it's not a straight up pumpkin beer. But let me know what you think. Have you had this? But one of the things I really want to ask everybody is there a lizard man beer? I feel like there should be. And I'm not sure, has anybody had any beers from Bishopville? What about the breweries there? I should have tried to get my hands on something. But yeah, I didn't think that all the way through. But that's okay. If you have had something from Bishopville, let me know. And if there is a lizard man beer out there, I've definitely got to get my hands on that. But today we'll go with Sycamore's Pumpkin Latte Blonde. Love cracking open a beer and doing these stories for you. But guys, cheers, and let's get back to the show. In 1988, the lizard man was all anyone was talking about. Sheriff Truesdale said that the lizard man had become a national celebrity and, quote, put Lee County on the map. He said that newspapers, television stations from all over the globe were coming here to go to Browntown and Scape Ore Swamp to try to find out anything they could about the lizard man. A radio station in Columbia, South Carolina, offered a $1 million reward for the capture of the lizard man. TV crews were rolling in. Reporters were sniffing around for a taste of the weird. And you better believe that local businesses were cashing in. T-shirts, bumper stickers, you name it. Hell, they even sold lizard man hamburgers at the local diner. The local sheriff, he threw himself right into this whole legend and scandal, taking the lizard man as a serious and potential threat to Bishopville. The sheriff did many interviews, and he encouraged witnesses with lizard man stories to come forward. when someone reported strange, enormous three-fingered tracks in the sand that matched, Chris Davis's drawing, Truesdale, the sheriff, personally drove out to the site and made casts of this alleged footprint. And he had planned to turn it over to the FBI. But I think someone dissuaded him from doing so. They probably were like, hey, man, this is batshit crazy. I don't know if you want to get the Federal Bureau of Investigation in on this. But so instead of giving them to the FBI, Truesdale eventually donated the cast to the South Carolina Cotton Museum, where they sit in a small glass case, and you can go see those today. Alongside the cast are a few other lizard man artifacts from the 1980s, including many different documents collected at the height of the frenzy, and an assortment of colored t-shirts featuring dozens of different lizard man interpretations. But what is it about creatures like the lizard man that people are fascinated with? Is it that we're all looking for a little bit of weirdness, something that makes you think, even for a second, that the world is a stranger place than you know? Is it the allure of the unknown, the whisper that maybe out there in the dark, there's still something we can't quite understand? In 2019, the folks of Bishopville decided it was time to bring the legend back to life. Enter the Friends of the Lizard Man Committee. Now, if you're imagining a bunch of cryptic enthusiasts sitting around in a dark room, well, you're only half right. Led by George Roberts, they had a vision, preserving the legend. They wanted to integrate this local piece of folklore back into the community. But just as they were starting to get their feet wet, COVID hit, and everything had to be kind of put on hold, probably for a lesser group, that might have been the end, but not this bunch. As soon as it was safe, they were back, ready to crank up the legend machine. By 2022, they pulled off their first event called The Stomp, named after those muddy, three-toed footprints left in 1988. Think of it like a Southern block party with a monster twist. They had it all: swamp-themed dishes, kids' games, live music, and a car show. It was a hit. And they weren't just playing off nostalgia. They were building something that brought the community together. In 2023, the Stomp got even bigger. They added a parade, food trucks, more bands, more vendors, and enough lizard man memorabilia to fill a museum. In a world where everything is available at the click of a button, sometimes you need a little mystery. You need a legend, a story that's much a part of the land as the trees and the rivers. And maybe that's why Bishopville holds on to its lizard man legend. It's not just a story, it's a statement. It says, yeah, we're a small town, but we've got something no one else does. We got a goddamn monster in a swamp. And that's a hell of a lot better than and more interesting than a strip mall. But whether you're a believer or a skeptic, you can't deny its appeal. There's a reason why people line up to buy T-shirts and lizard man statues. They eat swamp bog and watch. They go to watch parades. They go to these events. It's not about proving anything. It's about the thrill of the unknown, the possibility that there's still a little magic left in the world, and it's just kind of a neat thing. Many speculated, though, that Chris Davis simply ran off the road that night back in June 1988 and invented a story to save himself from his parents' wrath. I could totally see this as a 17-year-old taking the car out, probably wrecked it, and, was freaking out, But hey, maybe he did. Maybe he did see something. But I think because of his parents and the authorities, that they responded so positive to his story and actually believed him. I think that's why the lizard man legend kind of grew and grew, and then other people heard about it, and then they started coming forward with their stories. I think it just kind of took a life of its own. But among the people that grew tired of the attention and talking about the lizard man was Chris himself. At the height of his fame, he was rumored to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show, but he canceled last minute and then attempted to kind of like completely distance himself from the whole lizard man narrative. Eventually, Chris would move out of Bishopville to nearby Sumter, where he largely just disappeared from the public eye until in his late 30s. Unfortunately, he was shot and killed in 2009 at the age of 37. I don't think when Chris Davis first told the world about the lizard man that he ever expected it to take off like it did, and that this creature would be part of Bishopville more than 30 years later. Yet it doesn't seem that the lizard man is going anywhere. Like I said, there's groups that have tried to keep this legend alive with parades and events. So I think it's just a fun story, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Folklore and creatures like Bigfoot and Lizard Man, they captivate us because I feel like they represent a world where mystery still exists, where not everything has, been mapped or explained. These legends offer a taste of the unknown, a chance to believe that there's something still wild and untamed out there lurking just beyond the edge of the forest or the shadow of the swamp. They stir our imagination, inviting us to step outside of the ordinary and into a story where anything's possible. It's not just about the creatures themselves. It's kind of like the thrill of the hunt, the possibility of discovery. I think that's why you have hunters and, people going out to try to look for this thing. It's just fun. And, there's this sense of wonder. And these tales kind of connect us. We've talked about folklore a lot, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up, like the Witch of Yazoo and the Lizard Man. These legends become a form of like rebellion against the mundane. It's a reminder that there's more to this world than just what we see, and maybe, just maybe, there's still a little bit of mysticism left out there waiting to be found. And that's it for this episode of the Southern Blueprint Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you find yourself wandering through South Carolina, take a detour through Bishopville, walk around, and if you're feeling lucky, maybe drive out to Scape Ore Swamp. You never know what might be waiting just out of sight. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your wits about you. And guys, I will talk to you later.